Morning, Robert.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, welcome everybody, and thank you for welcoming me here. And now I've been practicing this technique for a long time, and how I got into it was when I was, hi, come on in, the show's just about to start. Good. You got a seat? Another seat? All right. Yeah, so I've been practicing a long time. I got into it by virtue of feeling a bit of stress and strain and unhappiness. And professionally, I was finding faults with people instead of being able to relate to them properly. And so I looked into myself and decided I was a bit hollow in the happiness department and needed to do something about it. And I had tried a few things, progressive muscle relaxation, where you lie on the floor and relax and eventually something might happen, but it was hit and miss. And then in 1971, I stumbled across this, and as soon as I started, it all fell into place. This technique is actually quite distinct from any other system of meditation or a system of personal mental development. And it's basically effortless. It doesn't use any control or concentration. But the thing that really distinguishes it is that there's about 600 research studies on it that have found something happens. And it works every time you do it. It's a systematic technique that you only do it for 20 minutes twice a day. And what you do is you're sort of taking the correct angle and diving in. That's what we teach you as teachers. And where you're diving into is your own inner self, which is calm. And having experienced that for 20 minutes, when you come out, some of that calmness stays with you, and more of it the more you've been doing it regularly, until eventually you never lose that. And we call it a state of consciousness that the founder of TM, the Maharishi, who you may have heard of, refers to that state as a state of enlightenment or self-realization. Now, that's all very sort of mystical sounding, but there's a blood and bone aspect to this. The physiology experiences a unique state of rest that's different from any other system of meditation that's available. They fall into three categories, and over behind this gentleman here there's a chart. Now, once we've seen the video, I'll go through the chart and explain the differences. But just fundamentally what happens in TM is that because the mind and the body are two sides of the one coin, every influence in the mind has a corresponding influence in the body, and so on. As you settle down mentally with this technique, and this is like a third dimension. So, we have concentration techniques like focusing on the surface. If we think of a pond or a lake where bubbles rise up and they're the thoughts. Concentration techniques, focusing on something, is like fixing your attention on the surface. And the mindfulness sort of techniques are a bit like moving around on the surface. So this technique is a third dimension. It gets you right down deep inside yourself, as I've mentioned. Now, what happens is that mental activity slows down until eventually you transcend, which means go beyond. And meditation means to think. So we actually transcend thought. All right, now after we've seen this video, I'll go into a bit more of detail of the technique. Now the point I'm getting to is that as the mind settles down, so too does the body. And the depth of rest that you get is many times deeper than deep sleep. And that's been scientifically validated. See over there, we'll have a look at that when the light comes on, but there's 600 studies, as I mentioned, 8 volumes of the scientific collected papers about this thick, and 5,000 plus pages of research into this, so it's huge. And when you get such deep rest, it really revitalizes your nervous system. And now this meditation has been found to be the only one that will reduce blood pressure of all of the different techniques around. And that's because the deep rest allows the blood vessels to dilate, and so the pressure comes down because there's less restriction to the heart pumping the blood around. That's how it works. So it's very mechanical, very scientific, and very systematic. It's a revival of an ancient technique from The Himalayas, 5,000 years old actually. And it's natural, effortless and very enjoyable, because when you get down you're getting into more and more pleasant experience of yourself. And then when you transcend, you feel like you've come back home. And it's a very beautiful, and I think Peter might...
yeah, it's just a great feeling that you get to that stage where there's no thoughts, no nothing, and it just feels...
And it's a sort of a state of fulfillment, we call it, fulfillment. It's like the rivers reach the ocean, and you feel unbounded and free, but also protected. It's quite a strong feeling, and physics has investigated finer and finer levels. You know, we have Newton, Einstein, and then particle physics, and now they've got to a unified field theory that everything emanates from some unseen source, and this technique is the technique of getting to that. So you connect up with all the laws of nature, you could say, and when you come out, you're intuitively guided by them more. So you get it right first time. You're more efficient and effective spontaneously. You use less energy to accomplish things. And we have people say that they get a day's work done in half a day. So I don't know what they get you to do after that. Now let's have a look at the research. Yeah, go.
Yeah, so Robert, firstly, thanks for coming on. This is awesome. Thank you. Secondly, so what happens if you don't get your 20 minutes twice a day?
Then
so
doesn't
I
work.
often do 12, 15 minutes.
Yeah, that's not quite as effective, but 20 minutes is the ideal time. What we're doing with this is we're integrating. Now there's two aspects to life. What physics has found is that there's a silent fundamental field that everything's emanating from, and for us the thought process comes out of there, and that's stable, and that's basically our unbounded self, and that integrates with the change. So you start to feel more stable, more in the moment, and less anxious with things that you have made a mess of in the past, and things that you've got to do. You don't find that they're in your awareness, but when we're anxious, then these things do come up. So it's an integration of 20 minutes balanced by hours of activity, and a bit like dyeing cloth, it's a progressive thing, and eventually the colour is sun fast in the cloth. Eventually this pure field of what we call consciousness is always there, and it kind of anchors you. And so you become more resilient, because like a palm tree can withstand greater winds than an oak tree, which is rigid, you're grounded, but you're flexible without feeling shaken when you have a challenge. Good. That sort of makes sense?
20 minutes is the optimal time.
Yeah.
And twice a day.
Yeah, that's what the Maharishi has recommended as the ideal formula. You don't have to do this for a long time, and we do have courses where you can go on a resonance course and have a longer exposure to it if you want to do that. But for busy, active people, you do it before you go to work, and that sets you up for the day, and then you do it before you have your dinner, and that sets you up for the evening.
So on an empty stomach, ideally.
Sorry?
On an empty stomach, ideally.
Not too empty, otherwise you get distracted by hunger. Yeah, just balance. This is all about balance. This is really about getting the work-life balance sorted out. A lot of people, they get home and they're exhausted, and this enables you to have it all. So we haven't got that much time. I can talk for hours on this, so you need to stop me. Let's see this summary of research.
You can play on your laptop. Is that play?
Oh, yeah, I get it.
The physiological results of having a technique to take deep rest at will are very far-reaching, as the next chart shows. According to 600 studies now that have been published in the world's leading medical journals and conducted at over 250 independent universities throughout the world, we've seen marked reductions in every major category of disease through this very simple program of twice daily rest, including 87% reduction in heart disease, for example. how can we understand 600 studies showing wide-ranging physical benefits from a simple intervention, from this technique for deep rest? Well, the basic reason is that we now know from the government, so we have to believe it, that about 90% of disease is caused or complicated by stress. If there were a simple means to dissolve accumulated stress, that would have wide-ranging benefits for the prevention and cure of disease. This next study is actually very important. It's a so-called meta-analysis of 146 previously published studies on the effects of what are called meditation techniques and relaxation techniques on reducing stress, and the negative effects of stress on brain functioning and on health. The top bar showing the magnitude of the effect is Transcendental meditation. And as you can perhaps see, it's more than twice as effective as any other approach that has ever been studied to reduce physiological stress. Also studied in the scientific literature are things like relaxation techniques, the relaxation response, progressive muscle relaxation, meditation techniques like mindfulness meditation, biofeedback, and finally at the bottom of this list, concentration. And as you can see from concentration, provides no relaxation at all because it dynamically engages the mind. The point here is not to engage the mind. The point is to give the mind a few minutes to settle down and sink deeply and naturally experience the state of deep rest, restful alertness. That is what has such powerful, sweeping effects on health and, as we'll see, on brain functioning. I do want to show one last slide that has to do with the subject of health and leave the further discussion of health to a great medical doctor, Dr. Gary Kaplan, who will be speaking in a few minutes. I want to show this, though, because it's a very important study on what's called metabolic syndrome. Metabolic syndrome, called the modern malaise or modern epidemic afflicting young people as well as adults. Metabolic syndrome is a combination of high blood pressure, diabetes, and obesity. There is nothing in the medical literature that simultaneously improves blood pressure, diabetes, and obesity, except for Transcendental meditation. And when the AMA, believe it or not, in the Journal of Internal Archives of Internal Medicine, published this result, the AMA actually became so excited about it that they issued a global press release, and thousands of articles were written on this extraordinarily simple intervention to prevent and reverse metabolic syndrome. If you're a young person, 16 years, 18 years of age, and you already have signs of rising blood pressure, diabetes, obesity, your prognosis for health, for life, is very poor. Now there's something simple, and this is the only thing that's been found scientifically to reverse all those symptoms. Enough of health for the moment. I just wanted to mention that all of these extensive health benefits that I've only alluded to are side effects of what is really a mental process. Meditation is a mental technique. And what is fundamentally happening, what is so exciting to me as an educator, is what's happening in the brain, what's happening in the mind. And the next chart just shows that with modern investigative procedures like the EEG, electroencephalogram, and the MEG, inspect and PET, and MRI and functional MRI, we can study what's going on in the brain during the meditation experience. And it's a very profound transformation, as this chart shows. This chart shows, by the way, on the left-hand side, the top view and front view of the brain, and on the right-hand side as well. But the difference is, on the left-hand side is a student, a subject, in ordinary, agitated, stressed, waking consciousness. Now, the little dots on the scalp in this picture, they indicate the position of electrodes measuring the neuronal firings. And you'll see on this chart, occasionally there are bars connecting neighboring points on the brain. Where you see a bar, it means that those neighboring parts of the brain are communicating. They're functioning in a correlated way, an integrated way. But in ordinary agitated waking consciousness, on the left, there's not much coordination in the brain, not much order, not much coherence. The brain is functioning, frankly, in a very scattered fashion. On the right-hand side, we show the very same student 3 months later, practicing the Transcendental meditation program and experiencing this meditative state, this expanded, silent state of consciousness. What you see is the whole brain is, you could say, crisscrossed by coherence. That means the whole brain functions in concert, in a completely integrated and coherent way. Orderliness of brain functioning. And the difference is like a symphony, frankly. Before the conductor arrives and the instruments are warming up and no attempt to coordinate the music, you get a cacophony of discordant sound. That's frankly what our brains look like. If you've ever seen your own EEG, it's depressing. There's no obvious order, no obvious intelligence in there, not much. But in the meditative state, we have this profound orderliness of brain functioning. It's like the composer arrives and raises his baton, and suddenly that chaos is transformed into flowing music. The chart on the right shows the whole brain functioning in concert, in a coherent, orderly way. That is an educational breakthrough of the foremost magnitude, because, as the next chart shows, orderly brain functioning correlates with intelligence, or IQ, rising creativity, academic performance, learning ability, moral reasoning, emotional maturity, psychological stability, alertness, reaction time. Everything good about the brain depends on its orderly functioning. And now today, with this tool of meditation, we can systematically increase the order and coherence of the brain in any student, indeed any adult. It's extremely simple, extremely natural.
Okay, good. Now, do you want to lift the shades up and then we can all see each other? Okay, thanks for that. Oh, lovely. Yeah, we'll get there. Yeah. Yep, thank you. Well done. Glad somebody's on the ball here. I'll take this down because I wanted to show you this research down the bottom here. Yeah, you want to hold that? Yeah, thanks a lot. So now this is actually in your brochures under Jerry Seinfeld, who's a very keen meditator. The researchers who put out this book here, Excellence Through Mind-Brain Development, have postulated the question, what distinguishes the best from the rest? And you would think in the case of athletes that it would be those who are training harder or longer, but in actual fact they found that it was those that responded better to a brain integration score, that a test that was sent out. And that's how these two were found, and the same for managers. Lindsay Fox is in this group, and Dick Smith. They sent this all around the world, and the scores came out, and this was the research. Now, 7-year meditators scored this much, and 25-year meditators scored this much. Doesn't mean that they're going to be better athletes. It means that you bring more of your brain resources to whatever you do when you practice this technique. So that's the significance of that. I think you've seen, I was going to show you this, but John Hagelin has already done that one, so we'll pop that down. Now, the other one is this one over here. Might be easier also if I take that down and wave it around. I'll be okay on this one, I think. It's a bit smaller, yeah. Thanks very much. So now that's the research chart that we just saw explained there. Interesting that concentration techniques are actually the bars going the other way. So they're slightly increasing anxiety, and it's because, as he said, you use energy to do them. And now this technique works by virtue of the natural tendency of the mind. And that's a key thing. What's our natural tendency? If you're sitting at home and you think, okay, I'll go to the movies, you usually, unless you're a masochist, you'll choose a movie that you hope you'll enjoy. Or if you hear your favourite Elton John, assuming you like Elton John, if you hear your favourite Elton John song playing next door, without even making a decision, your attention will go and listen to it. So that we call our natural tendency of the mind. And everybody's hardwired to enjoy. We move towards happiness and away from suffering. And when you're concentrating on something, the mind gets quickly bored and it starts going off and you're constantly bringing it back. So you're going against the nature of the mind. This creates stress or pressure, and the brain thinks there's a threat, and so cortisol starts getting pumped into the system and you feel anxious. And you don't know why you're feeling anxious, but you know you are, and that makes you more anxious, and so more cortisol. Now, cortisol is the fight and flight response. And when a person is under pressure, then that's what starts to develop, and the effect is that you get anxious. So now TM gets cortisol down about 32% when you practice it, and sleep gets it down about 2 or 3%. So a dramatic difference there. Now these are the brain researchers found that there are 3 groups, 3 types of meditation: concentration, mindfulness that we saw when he was going through that, and then automatic self-transcending. And you can see the coherence here on the brain waves. So each has got a different brainwave signature, and it goes from hard to easy. Good. How are we going?
Good.
As I said, I can talk for hours, but I won't.
20 minutes.
Huh?
20 minutes so far. All good.
All right, good. Oh, that's okay. I think, yeah. The natural tendency of the mind attracts it's like gravity. When you do the technique, you start, and we use something that is a vehicle for the mind to ride on, and it's a meaningless sound, the effects of which are known, and it comes from a very ancient tradition of knowledge. It predates all of the isms: Buddhism, Hinduism, Christianity, Islam. All of these religions have sort of come up more recently in the last couple of thousand years. This is about 5,000 years old, apparently. It's called Vedic knowledge. And Veda in the language is Sanskrit, and Veda means knowledge in Sanskrit. And this is recorded insights by seers who sat in the Himalayas in the quiet and very refined nervous systems, perceive the mechanics of nature and how to make maximum use of and get into maximum harmony with nature to be more effective and healthy and happy. And so this technique that was founded by the Maharishi, his picture is on here. That's all the research, we saw that.
Where did you meet the Maharishi, Robert?
When I did my training, which was over in 1971 over in Europe. Yeah. So Maharishi has revived meditation in its purity and effectiveness from ancient times. Now, I first started teaching this in 1972 in East Melbourne, and there was nothing else in society at that point. So everything else has sort of come along, and the Maharishi has been really historic. 8 million have learnt TM in the 50 plus years that it's been around. Maharishi's passed on about 10 years ago, but he's set it up very systematically and scientifically, so you can learn from any trained teacher and you get the precise result that you're looking for. So the mantra is a meaningless sound. It's a vehicle that you use for the mind to ride on. So when we teach, the course is 4 consecutive days for about an hour on each day, and you learn the technique on the first day, and you're taught your mantra, and then you get instructions how to use it properly. Now, this is not mantra meditation. Mantra meditation is second on the bottom here of the anxiety hit parade. Okay, so it's not something that you just sit there chanting. You need to be shown personally. We're hardwired to enjoy, but like when we were born, vocal cords, we had to be trained how to use them. So it's like that. We've got this natural tendency to enjoy, and so we have to teach you how to take the correct angle. So it's all about how to use the sound. The qualities of the mantra, it's meaningless, and its effects are known to be life-supporting on all levels of experience. there's not one for everybody and not a different one for everybody. It's a bit like blood groups. And we're trained as teachers to allocate which sound is correct for each person. And so the other characteristic of the sound is that they're slippery. They refine. The mantra refines it and takes you in. So you take the correct angle and let go, and then using the mantra as the vehicle, you get to the destination of pure consciousness, or we call it bliss consciousness, yourself, and it feels really good. And when you come out, you feel refreshed and invigorated from that. There's somebody in those brochures which you're taking away, Ray Dalio, who's a head of the biggest hedge fund in the world, and he started TM when he was a student in 1972, and he says that he regularly gives $1 million to the David Lynch Foundation, by the way, which is set up to bring TM to underprivileged people. But Dalio says that this has been the single most important reason for the success he's had. So quite a significant contribution there. Good. So the course involves those 4 days, and you learn the technique, and then you go home, you do it. And as your experience unfolds, the course is designed to provide understanding. So it's like 2 feet. Experience, knowledge, more experience, more knowledge. On the second day after you've learnt, we have an analysis of all of the experiences, you understand them. Now, when we were talking before about the deep rest that you get in TM, that actually dissolves deep-seated stress and strain that sleep doesn't get at. And so that goes for good. So if there's been some traumatic experience, and incidentally, research recently has come out that shows that TM is more effective at dissolving post-traumatic stress than any other type of approach. The other approaches are repetitive therapy, which is pretty terrible, and then there's another aspect as well. But this is found, and that was published in The Lancet about 18 months ago.
They do a lot with the PTSD with all the veterans and American stuff.
That's right, yes, veterans. And the lady in the brochure there, Nicole Yeda, number 5, she actually practices, and she runs a women's refuge for women with complicated trauma from domestic violence, and they're getting fantastic results with that. So it rehabilitates you. And the veterans, as Pete said, the veterans are very applicable to that, especially in America, because they don't get really looked after. There's such a huge number of them. Yeah.
Is it appropriate for all ages?
Sorry?
All ages? What sort of?
Yes, yeah. You can do this from 10 years old up to whatever. Yeah. And it's now high blood pressure, for example, is number 1 cause of aging. So when you get your blood pressure down normal, the heart's not working so hard, and so you live longer. As Hagelin mentioned, there's research, it's at number 2 in there, 48% reduction in death, heart attack and stroke in middle-aged African Americans. And the control group was getting health education, the TM group wasn't, but you spontaneously know what's right and wrong for you. But we should focus on business performance a little bit more probably. The ability to be getting it right first time is what's enhanced by getting in touch with this deep field within. And I'll just show you the chart here. So physics calls this a unified field, and there's a representation of the increasingly fine levels of life, and then they've now unified it into one value, and that is the field out of which everything emanates. And for us, the thought process comes out of there. So your thought process gets more powerful. It's like pulling an arrow back on a bow. When you put the arrow on the bow and let it go, it just falls, and that's like sitting down, having a rest. So it's quite different to just sitting and having a rest. You're systematically refining, getting back deep inside yourself. And the arrow is stationary here when it's fully pulled back, but it's ready to fly. And that enables you to hit the target, because if the thought force is weak, then the arrow falls short. And so you're more effective with this. And as I mentioned before, you use less energy to accomplish things. and also you analyse less. You know intuitively what's right and wrong. Yeah.
The creativity, I noticed, was a big thing that goes through the roof.
Creativity is a very good topic, because this field is constantly creating. Everything's growing. And for us, the creativity is based on thought process. You know, okay, I want to be this, I want to do this, I would enjoy doing that. So this is all thoughts that we have in our heart, and TM just helps you to achieve that. And you become certainly much more creative and also much more intelligent with this. Yeah. Sorry?
Efficient.
Efficiency, yep.
Could you draw the, you know the little diagram you do in the whiteboard, Robert, with like the sea and then the bubbles going down?
Sorry, I'm on your way.
No, you're right. I'll do it over here. Just maybe we'll take that one over there. Yep. Yep. Okay. So now this is a representation of blue's my favourite colour. There's no blue here. So thoughts come up from the bottom. That one's not so good. We'll see if we can get orange thoughts happening. Not so good. All right. Red thoughts, maybe. There we go. All right, so thoughts come up and they burst on the surface of the mind. And this is like our 5 to 15% of our mental potential that psychologists tell us we use. Now, this is the area where the, let's see if this black one works. Concentration techniques like focusing here. Mindfulness is like moving around here. And so TM is taking this angle and diving in. And if you dive too steep, you bounce off. That's like trying to force your way in. This is increasing effortlessness here. And this is not diving deeply too shallow and you bounce off. And that's more like meandering mindfulness. So this area here is what we call pre-conscious or subconscious. And this field, bliss consciousness, is what attracts the mind. So with the technique, we keep the mind lively but undirected, and using this vehicle, the mantra, we get down here into this field. And so this line here starts to come down. You start to expand the mind, but it gets quieter at the same time, if that makes sense. And don't forget, this is totally natural. You just feel completely at ease, increasingly so, and then eventually when you transcend fully, you're experiencing this inner field of pure consciousness. Now, the research has found that this is a unique state of consciousness, different from waking, sleeping, dreaming. We call it restful alertness. Body very deeply rested, mind inactive, mind more alert than in the waking state. A new style of functioning, a fourth major state of consciousness. And then when you have that all the time, when you've got all of the more subtle unfolded, all of the stress in your life is gone in your physiology, then you are experiencing a fifth state of consciousness where the two things are together, the silence and activity. So you feel, as I said before, anchored and flexible at the same time. Yeah. Now I'll throw open to questions, I think.
Any questions?
So what happens if you fall asleep in meditation?
Then, when you finish sleeping, then you pick it up again.
And how long does it normally take to get to the, I suppose, to the
pretty much immediate.
land of bliss?
Yeah, pretty much immediate. Yeah. We often hear examples of people saying, oh, you know, wow, really clear, but some other people might take a little longer. However, during the course, which is the 4 days, you know, I see people each day, we often hear things like, I'm getting on much better at work, getting on with other people much better, and spontaneously more effective. But we also hear that sleeping better. I had my first decent sleep for 10 years, I often hear that, you know. So it's pretty immediate what happens, yeah.
It takes me probably about 5 or 10 minutes to get down to there sometimes.
Well, yeah, I mean, some people get in straight away and others might take a little longer. It's really when the stress gradually dissolves, then you find that you're down deeper and deeper, and then eventually you're there all the time.
You don't want to come out whenever you get there.
No, and the thing is that you feel a sense of power when you're there. You feel the energy of the physicists say that this is percolating down here, you know, because it's sort of dynamic. They say now, you know, you've heard of electrons, you know, going around the nucleus. They're saying now that electrons are disappearing and re-emerging all the time. So the energy is there. It's huge energy, and this gives you the resource to tap into it.
So you spoke about the mantras before. So
yep.
Did you say that everyone has their own individual mantra?
Everyone has that individual sound, and not everybody has a different one, but not everybody has the same one. It's a bit like blood groups.
So it's designed for you.
So is it
And
dependent on your age as well?
We don't discuss the criteria, but once you've learnt the course, we'll put you on teacher training. Sorry, I've done that.
Yeah, I've done it.
You've done the TM course?
Yeah.
Oh, where'd you do it?
In Collingwood.
In Collingwood. That's
For Collingwood Fitzroy, just off Alexander Parade.
right. Who was the
I'm
teacher?
going back 20 years ago.
Oh, okay. Oh, Queen's Parade.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay, lovely. Yeah, I used to teach
Near
there.
the Fitzroy football
Yep.
ground.
Yep. Up there near the Everett Gardens. Yeah, I used to teach there, and a good friend of mine probably taught you, or myself.
Probably did.
Yes. Yeah, your face is familiar. I probably taught you.
Good.
And are you still doing it, or?
Oh, I practiced it, yes.
Yep,
I
good.
dropped it for a while. I'm back on it the last
Terrific.
6 to 8 months.
Yeah, good. Well, you can go in, included in the deal that we make to get you started is lifetime of follow-up. So you could just go back and
So it's still
have a
happening
tune
now?
up. It's not it's not there anymore. But I teach in Toorak. There's also a centre in St Kilda Road. There's one over in Reservoir, and then some others southeast. Yeah. But you could. Whereabouts do you live?
Williamstown.
Willie. Yeah. Well, then you could go into the city centre, or you could come to me, and we'll
'Cause I only
tune you up.
Well, I only recently Googled it again, and
Yeah.
my understanding was because I've changed age bracket, age group, it changed.
No, you don't want to believe everything you read on the net.
Oh, really?
Yeah, no, you don't have to worry about that, but it's all about how to use it.
So keep my
Yes,
same
sir.
mantra
You
what
would.
it was.
You would, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And then once you get established, we've got advanced techniques you can do, and then they'll put you into a new gear.
Because I do recall at the time it was don't discuss your mantra with anyone else.
That's the idea, yeah. Now the reason for that is that you want to develop subtle experience. And if you bring the mantra out on the gross level, it weakens it. Like you don't dig up a seed to see how it's getting on, you see?
Yeah.
All right, so you keep it just in your practice and then use it properly and enjoy.
Okay.
Yeah. But you've got my card there. I'd be very happy to have
Top up.
give you a top up and be no charge.
No.
Good.
Do it after this.
Oh, yeah, we could do something here. Yeah, sure. If there's a room, it'll cost you a jar of honey. I forgot to bring it with me. Any other questions?
So did you say it's a 4-day course for an hour per day?
About an hour per day.
So it's a 4-hour course?
6 an hour to an hour and a half, depending on the size of the group. Now, the advantage is with the group, having learned individually, you get the benefit of each other's experiences and questions,
Yeah.
and you're inspired by everybody else's progress.
Yeah.
And it's a very good way of learning, and we have a group meditation in each of those days. And we're basically training you to be self-sufficient in being able to do it, but included is recommendation to have regular tune-ups, such as we've just been discussing.
Yeah.
And that's very important. And a lot of people come in saying, well, it's free, I'll have it. And they, well, I think it's going all right. And then afterwards they say, oh, well, I thought it was going all right, but it's going better. So it's a very important thing to regularly tune it up. Good.
Any other questions?
I think we're sort of, I'm a bit conscious of your time because you've got parcels to get moving, haven't you?
We don't deliver, it's all right.
So as Robert says, he teaches this on an individual basis or like group corporate training too. So yeah, if anybody was interested, just contact Robert. His business card is there. I can do it 100%.
God, satellites are made. It's transforming.
I highly recommend it.
Yeah,
to everyone.
terrific.
Thank you.
You won't, it's like becoming a parent. You just don't understand it until you actually it happens.
Experience it, yeah. Yes.
Is that good?
Yes.
Depends on
I
your
don't think that
parents.
analogy is that
Depends
good.
on your parenting, Bill.
Hey? Oh, your kids. Got 4 of them. Kids, don't they, Miles? You've got a few
Thanks,
more.
Robert.
Okay, thank you. Pleasure.